Part 1. The Board. In Chapter 1, Luca wakes from nightmares of burning ships and prepares for a funeral honoring the Balladairan citizens lost in the Rain Rebellion. At the ceremony, she attempts to speak of peace with Qazāl, but her uncle, Duke Nicholas Anshir, interrupts, seizing control of the narrative. The memorial statue, a black stone ship, symbolizes both Balladar's past greatness and the tragedy Nicholas caused by sinking plague-ridden ships before they could return home. Afterward, Luca navigates political discussions, including an offer from Comtesse Ghislaine Belgideau to establish Qazāli settlements in Ballaдаir, an apparent act of generosity masking economic self-interest. Meanwhile, Bastien, the new Comte de Beausang, returns with a shocking theory. Balladair's magic is tied to the land itself. He suspects Ghislaine knows more and plans to investigate. Luca realizes she is losing influence over the court and still awaits a response from Touraine regarding her invitation to join negotiations for Qazāl's official independence. In Chapter 2, the Qazāli Council, now leading the newly independent nation, meets to discuss governance. Delegates from other Qazāli cities challenge Elwas's leadership, with Basim and Dina particularly hostile toward Touraine and Aranan. Aranan, accused of perverting Shal's magic, voluntarily steps down from the council to ease tensions. The council faces resource shortages with food running low and military forces lacking numbers. Istam proposes uniting with other Shallan nations to launch an attack against Balladair, but Touraine argues for peace, believing Balladair won't return for war. Jaghatai supports her, voting against war for now. Touraine presents an invitation from Luca to ratify the treaty and attend her coronation. Jaghatai insists Touraine should go to Balladair to ensure Luca honors the treaty and to watch over Qazāli citizens settling there. Touraine resists, fearing what returning might cost her, but Jaghatai urges her to think on it, trusting only her for the mission. In Chapter 3, Touraine struggles with her place in Qazāl, torn between her duties as a soldier, politician, and reluctant priest. She checks in on Pruitt, who is training the new recruits, but a round of musket fire triggers a painful memory of her own execution. Pruitt recognizes Touraine's unease and later confronts her about Luca's invitation. Touraine insists she refused to go back, but Pruitt points out that Jaghatai wants her to return because Luca is vulnerable to her influence. Touraine seeks guidance from Aranan, who acknowledges their complicated past with Luca but insists she is Qazāl's best hope for a lasting peace. Aranan also reveals she will accompany Touraine to Balladair, arguing that their absence will help ease tensions in Qazāl's divided council. Touraine is left feeling unmoored, her last reason for staying in Qazāl slipping away as she realizes she has no choice but to return to Balladair. In Chapter 4, Pruitt prepares for the execution of Casimir Laroche de Beausang, reflecting on her resentment toward the Balladairan compound and its past horrors. As she retrieves Beausang from his cell, he taunts her about her loyalty and scorns the new Qazāli leadership. Pruitt shoves him into the dirt, and Jaghatai, holding back her rage, delivers a brutal kick to his face. At the gallows, Beausang's daughter, Alias, spits in his face but says nothing. The execution is swift and unremarkable. No last words, no struggle, just the crack of his neck. Afterward, Touraine asks Pruitt if all they are good for is killing. Pruitt, bitter, tells Touraine to stop wallowing and take her chance to leave. She walks away without looking back, unwilling to face the fear she saw in Touraine's eyes, because it mirrors the fear she feels in herself. In Chapter 5, Touraine and Aranan board a Qazāli ship bound for Balladair. The council, including the new city representatives, agrees not to send gifts, making it clear this is a diplomatic mission, not tribute. As Touraine searches for Pruitt, Malika warns her that Balladair will exploit their weaknesses. Said gifts Touraine books, urging her to remember where she belongs. Jaghatai assigns Gaden, a clever young fighter, as Touraine's page to ensure a Qazāli presence. Before departure, Pruitt arrives, reluctant but emotional. She tells Touraine to be careful with Luca, admitting she still cares. As the ship sails, Touraine watches her home disappear, burdened by the expectations placed on her. Meanwhile, Luca plays a strategic game of checks with her uncle, Duke Nicholas, who challenges her leadership and warns against trusting the Qazāli. As the journey drags on, Touraine struggles to suppress her feelings for Luca, knowing she must remember the princess's past betrayals. In Chapter 6, Luca visits her uncle Nicholas's droidist school and immediately distrusts its pristine appearance and military-like discipline. The children, Qazāli orphans, appear well-fed and educated, but the sharp schoolmistress and the imposing fence make Luca uneasy. Ghislaine and Nicholas exchange knowing glances, leaving Luca suspicious of deeper motives. Later, Luca visits the Hand of the Queen, a shelter she secretly funds for Qazāli refugees. The proprietor, Madame Beryl, informs her that some Qazāli have been attacked in the city. Luca is alarmed when she discovers Ghislaine has been directing Qazāli laborers to a district she controls. On the way back to the palace, Luca discusses strategy with Gil. He warns that her uncle has the noble's support and questions how far she's willing to go for the crown. Luca insists she'll do whatever it takes. Just then, a messenger informs her that the Qazāli ambassador has arrived. Luca prays it's Touraine. In Chapter 7, Touraine, Aranon, and Gadon arrive in Lachaise under stormy skies, met by guard Captain Gil. Luca herself greets them, but their reunion is tense and formal. Touraine struggles with conflicting emotions, resenting Luca's control over her new role and feeling the weight of Qazāl's expectations. At the palace, Touraine and Aranon prepare for a grand dinner where they face Balladairan nobles, including Luca's uncle, Duke Nicholas. The Duke, seeking to humiliate Luca, forces a public test of Shallan healing magic. When Touraine hesitates, Nicholas slashes a young servant's arm, demanding proof of their power. Touraine tries to heal him but fails, and Aranon furiously denounces Nicholas's cruelty. Luca, visibly shaken, cannot intervene. Aranon escorts the wounded boy away, while Touraine, furious and humiliated, follows. Before leaving, she notices something rare in Luca: fear. The battle for control in Balladair has only begun. In Chapter 8, Luca follows Touraine after the disastrous dinner, attempting to explain herself. Touraine, furious, demands to know why she was specifically summoned. Luca admits she needs help stopping her uncle, Duke Nicholas, from seizing power and undermining the Qazāli treaty. Touraine is horrified at the possibility of more war, but remains wary of Luca's true intentions. She insists on being addressed formally, signaling a clear boundary between them. At the infirmary, Touraine witnesses the young servant's trauma and tells Luca to leave. Later, she confides in Aranon, expressing doubts about both her role in diplomacy and her Shallan abilities. Aranon warns her that abandoning her faith could mean losing everything, as it did for Jasha. Meanwhile, Luca confesses to Sabine that she still needs Touraine's support. Sabine agrees to befriend and guide Touraine, recognizing her importance. As Luca strategizes, the tensions between her and Nicholas grow ever more dangerous. In Chapter 9, Philly follows her master, Maître Gaspard, through the streets of La Gouttière to a secret gathering. The hidden meeting is led by Brother Michel, a charismatic leader rallying the working-class citizens against the nobility. He speaks of oppression, hunger, and exploitation, calling for action through an underground movement known as the Fingers. The crowd, including Philly, is captivated by his message of revolution. As Philly listens, she realizes this movement could be her chance at justice. She and Gaspard approach Sister Velta, who is recruiting members. Philly, though only 16, insists she is ready to help. Velta takes her information in a coded shorthand, ensuring secrecy. When asked why she wants to join, Philly clenches her fists and says she owes the princess a debt. The chapter ends with Philly fully committing to the rebellion, ready to play her part in bringing down Balladair's rulers. In Chapter 10, Touraine is summoned by Duke Nicholas, who interrogates her about her upbringing as a conscript. In a private library, he scrutinizes her like an experiment, questioning her education under General Cantic and the value of the conscript program. When he orders her to pose, she realizes he sees her as nothing more than a specimen. He reveals that he founded the conscript program and has since expanded it, establishing a new school for Qazāli immigrants, reinforcing his views on their supposed inferiority. Touraine is disgusted, but remains composed, though she deeply regrets bringing Gadon with her. Meanwhile, Luca apologizes to Aranon and Munir for her uncle's cruelty, offering the boy a safer position in the palace kitchen. Later, she meets with Aranon to discuss an alliance and the potential of Qazāli healing magic. Aranon rebukes Luca for excluding Touraine from the conversation, forcing Luca to confront her own reluctance. In Chapter 11, after her unsettling meeting with Duke Nicholas, Touraine takes Gadon to the palace training yard, seeking an outlet for her anger. There, she encounters Valmorin, a young soldier who offers to spar, but their interaction is interrupted by Lieutenant Fougère, who mocks her and challenges her to fight multiple opponents. The Marquise de Durfort intervenes, orchestrating a match where Touraine easily defeats Valmorin and 2 other soldiers. Durfort then offers to teach Touraine how to duel with a sword, claiming it will earn her respect among the nobles. Suspicious but aware of its usefulness, Touraine agrees. The Marquise hints that she can also help Touraine navigate court politics, making the offer more valuable. As Touraine suspects their stay in Balladair will last longer than expected, she reluctantly accepts Durfort's guidance, knowing she will need every advantage to survive in the political battlefield. A healer's interlude. 1. Aranon sits alone in the infirmary, watching over the sleeping boy, struggling with a loss greater than any before. She attempts to pray, to channel Qazāl's healing power through her hands, but the magic does not come. The ritual that once felt natural now fails her, leaving her cold. She is truly alone, without Jasha, without Qazāl, without the certainty that once defined her. The memory of wielding destructive power against the Blood General haunts her, and she cannot deny that she had enjoyed the raw force of it. She tells herself she believes in Qazāl's tenets of peace, yet the thought of Duke Nicholas's smug face stirs something darker within her. For the first time, Aranon realizes she is afraid, not of losing her god, not of Balladair, but of herself. Of what she might be capable of if she lets go of the faith she has clung to for so long. Part 2. Scholars and Nobles and Priests. In Chapter 12, during Luca's birthday parade, Touraine struggles to control her horse, feeling out of place in Balladair's elite world. Luca offers her a position of honor beside her, meant to signal royal favor to the Qazāli and Targans. Touraine reluctantly agrees, but when she witnesses Balladairan citizens attacking a Qazāli man over Luca's thrown coins, she abandons the parade to intervene. She disperses the fight, but her actions cause a public spectacle, further damaging her reputation. Realizing the Qazāli in the city are struggling to survive, she promises to speak to Luca on their behalf. Later she arrives late and mud-covered to Luca's banquet, facing rumors and Aranon's disapproval for her lack of political caution. As the banquet begins, Luca enters in a striking turquoise coat, projecting confidence and authority. But when she takes her seat, she meets Touraine's gaze with cold detachment. In Chapter 13, Touraine avoids scrutiny at dinner as de Moyenne dominates the conversation. Later, Luca approaches her, unexpectedly asking about the Qazāli man she defended. Luca warns Touraine to be more strategic, but Touraine plays along, subtly regaining Luca's trust. During the banquet, the Targan high priest Albric confronts Touraine, recognizing her magic and hinting at an alliance between Qazāl and Targan against Balladair. He offers her a place where Qazāli would be respected. Touraine is tempted, knowing her people need allies, but betraying Luca again weighs on her. Meanwhile, Luca speaks with the Targan princelings and realizes they are making political moves against Balladair in Lunab. When she sees Albric speaking with Touraine, she rushes to intervene, fearing she will lose her. Before she can, Bastian intercepts her, requesting a private meeting in the garden. Luca agrees reluctantly, but when she reaches the balcony, Touraine is already gone. In Chapter 14, Touraine escapes the banquet's tension and follows Durfort into the Rose Maze, where the Marquise offers political insight and court dynamics. She advises Touraine to embrace her role as an ambassador and presents herself as an ally. Their conversation turns flirtatious, but before anything happens, Luca's scream shatters the night. Touraine and Durfort race toward the sound and find Luca kneeling over Bastian's body, his throat slit, blood staining the white roses. Denio, Luca's guard, pulls her away, fearing the murderer is still nearby. Touraine secures Luca and leads her safely back to the palace. Once inside, Luca receives an urgent letter from her uncle, the Duke Regent. It confirms his plan to hold a trial of competence, a challenge to her rule that could strip her of the throne. The letter is signed by 5 nobles, including Sabine. Shocked and betrayed, Luca whispers, "Sabine, how could you?" In Chapter 15, Luca confronts Sabine about signing the Duke Regent's decree. Sabine admits she was blackmailed. Nicholas threatened to strip her family's holdings due to their financial ruin after losing investments in Qazāl. Luca realizes she has underestimated her uncle's cruelty. Sabine insists she was scared and felt something unspoken, a deeper threat. When Luca suggests Nicholas orchestrated Bastian's murder to hurt her, Sabine hesitantly agrees. Luca vows not to step down and secures Sabine's vote in the trial of competence. The next morning, Luca meets Gil, who confirms no suspects were found. She shares her plan to win the trial, revealing that the Targans offered military support. Gil warns against trusting them, fearing an invasion. Luca, determined to avoid civil war, insists she'll fight to secure the throne peacefully. Gil reassures her of his loyalty, reminding her that she carries the best of both her parents. In Chapter 16, Touraine, Aranon, and Gadon attempt to flee Balladair, but before they can board a ship, palace soldiers intercept them under orders from Duke Nicola. Instead of meeting with him, they are confined to their quarters, effectively held as hostages. The next morning, Touraine is summoned to a meeting with the Duke, where he presents a revised treaty that strips Qazāl of aid and demands tribute to Balladair. He also pressures Touraine to prove Shallan magic exists, suggesting he will keep them detained until he gets what he wants. Back in her quarters, Touraine shares the news with Aranon, who insists they must withhold their magic and strategize with Luca before acting. Frustrated, Touraine attempts to use Shallan magic on herself, but fails. She realizes the only leverage she has left is Luca's feelings for her and wonders what she will have to offer in return to secure Qazāl's future. In Chapter 17, Touraine's message reaches Qazāl via Niwai's vulture, alerting Jaghatai and the council that she and Aranon are being held hostage, the Duke is keeping the throne, and the treaty is in jeopardy. Pruitt delivers the letter and dismisses any hope that Balladair would ever honor its promises. Jaghatai decides that Qazāl must secure aid from Mesredin, a former ally now under Balladairan control, and tasks Pruitt with leading the mission. Though reluctant, Pruitt has no choice, realizing she is not as free in Qazāl as she believed. She is assigned Kiris, a guide who knows the desert and Mesredin well. With only a small force accompanying them, Pruitt sees the mission as a fool's errand, but accepts it. She informs Noah, frustrated that she is being sent back to a home she never wanted, running once again under someone else's orders. In Chapter 18, Luca presides over Bastian's funeral, seething with anger at her uncle Nicholas, who she believes orchestrated Bastian's murder. She vows revenge, but Nicholas warns her she has already lost. Meanwhile, Touraine receives an early morning invitation from Sabine for fencing lessons, bringing Gadin along. During training, Sabine hints at the necessity of making political moves before being used as a pawn. Later, Luca and Touraine reunite in the abandoned royal chambers, where Luca reflects on her parents' expectations and the burden of her throne. Touraine reassures her, urging her to be true to herself. Luca reveals her belief that Nicholas had Bastian killed, and that he plans to use Touraine's magic to undermine her claim. Instead of direct confrontation, Luca proposes a bold move, traveling to Champdor to investigate Bastian's lead, using unexpected strategies to outmaneuver Nicola. Touraine agrees, recognizing they must act before being outplayed. In Chapter 19, Luca and Touraine arrive at Champdor, a region of vast golden wheat fields seeking Lady Belgedau's support. Touraine, wary of Ghislaine's disdain for the Qazāli, agrees to help Luca secure her backing. Over lunch, Ghislaine flaunts her wealth and subtly diminishes Qazāli culture, yet Luca presses her for answers about Bastian's research. Ghislaine resists, dismissing Luca's inquiries, but tension lingers. Touraine visits the Qazāli workers and reunites with Sulmain, who reveals that many took jobs on Ghislaine's estate out of desperation. He hints at something being wrong with the wheat, low yields and odd characteristics, but stops short of explaining. He mentions Balladairan workers secretly visiting a place called the Lord's Seat after discovering the issue. When Touraine questions the seneschal, he reluctantly admits that the fields are failing, and the last time such an event occurred, it was linked to the devastating phenomenon known as the withering. In Chapter 20, Touraine, Luca, and Gadon investigate Sulmain's hunch about Balladairan workers secretly visiting the Lord's Seat. At the top of the hill, they find nothing but shards of clay soaked in sour wine, seemingly proof of nothing but drunken laborers. As they take in the breathtaking view, Luca gives Touraine 2 grief rings for Thibaut and Amy, apologizing for her past actions. Before Touraine can process the gift, Gadin climbs down the cliff and discovers human remains, partially decomposed bones, and a clay disc marked with a fruit on one side and a skull on the other. Touraine realizes the remains are too recent for religion to have truly been eradicated from Balladair. Luca decides to have Ghislaine handle the body's disposal and sees an opportunity. She claims to know how to secure Ghislaine's vote, leaving Touraine groaning at whatever scheme Luca has in mind. In Chapter 21, Luca enacts her plan to win Ghislaine's support by staging a fake healing demonstration. At lunch, Gadon pretends to suffer a severe leg injury, and Touraine theatrically heals her. Ghislaine is visibly shaken, recognizing the magic but warning Luca against meddling. She accuses Luca of seeking power at any cost, comparing her to her father. Luca counters by revealing her knowledge of religious practices still occurring on Qazāl's land, demanding answers. Qazāl concedes her vote, but reveals a dark truth. Balladaire's lost magic required child sacrifices. She claims her family helped eradicate it and ensure it never returned, securing their noble position. The revelation shakes Luca, making her question the history she's been uncovering. Worse, Nicholas has known all along. As Luca struggles to process the implications, Qazāl smugly insists that whatever Luca hopes to do with magic, she is already too late. It is lost forever. A healer's interlude. 2 Aranin shares tea with guard Captain Gillette, reflecting on grief and loss. She admits she struggles daily with wanting to die, but Gillette, who lost the king and queen, tells her he never wanted to die. He survives for Luca, their shared responsibility. Their conversation is interrupted by a knock at the door. A blackcoat, Roland Tessut, introduces himself, revealing he once knew Jascha and has come to repay a debt. Aranin recognizes him from Luca's birthday as a delegate from the southern mountains, and as former lieutenant in the Balladairan Colonial Brigade under General Cantic. When Aranin accuses him of killing Jascha's family, he acknowledges it without guilt, saying Jascha refused to forgive him, telling him to wait 30 years before asking again. Learning that Cantic killed Jascha and Aranin avenged her, Roland remains impassive, but his presence suggests unfinished business. Part 3, Pawns and Chevaliers. In Chapter 22, The World Upside Down. Luca wrestles with Qazāl's revelation that Balladair once sacrificed children to control the land's fertility. Troubled, she questions whether magic is worth such a cost. Touraine, still haunted by past violence, struggles with the morality of power and war. Their carriage is ambushed by gunmen, forcing them into a chaotic fight. Touraine freezes, experiencing battle shock, while Luca protects her. Captain Peril, wounded but alive, insists Nicola was not behind the attack. In the chaos, Gadin disappears, devastating Touraine. Back at the palace, Aranin tends to Touraine and Luca. Luca, seeking answers, learns from Aranin that Shallan magic requires sacrifice, with a schism forming between Qazāli and Brigani over the limits of its use. Aranin admits she used Jascha's blood to fuel her magic, while Touraine refused. The chapter ends with Aranin's challenge. What is Luca willing to sacrifice? In Chapter 23, A Wound, Reopened, Pruitt leads a group of Qazāli fighters to Masriden, seeking aid for Qazāl. However, Masriden, ruled by Lord Governor Yorub, has fully submitted to Balladair. Yorub mocks their request, rejecting any aid and showing contempt for the Qazāli cause. As Pruitt considers alternative plans, including force, Masridani Blackcoats ambush their camp, outnumbering and overwhelming the rebels. Pruitt tries to rally her forces, but the battle turns into a chaotic retreat. In the chaos, Noe and Kiras go missing, and Pruitt witnesses a Shallan priest using magic to kill. Realizing the futility of the fight, she orders the survivors to flee. Defeated and furious, Pruitt is left with a handful of fighters, some camels, and no allies. Devastated by the betrayal of her homeland, she curses Masriden and breaks down, questioning her place in the world and the choices that led her here. In Chapter 24, the desperate Touraine, haunted by dreams of Gadin, is reluctant to continue the search, but Luca forces her into action. They visit a charity, learning Gadin hasn't sought food or shelter, and then head to the Duke's School for Shallan children, where Touraine realizes Luca never told her about its existence. Inside, Touraine witnesses a schoolmistress abusing a young girl for singing in Shallan. Enraged, Touraine attacks the woman, breaking her nose. Luca intervenes, reminding her they have nowhere to take the children. Overwhelmed, Touraine flees outside and collapses, realizing her actions might have worsened things for the children left behind. Luca holds her as she breaks down, knowing that while they couldn't free the children, they have seen someone fight for them, but Gadin is still missing, and the Duke remains in control. The weight of their powerlessness is crushing. In Chapter 25, a spark, Fili, a young Balladairan, encounters a wounded, blood-stained Qazāli girl, Gadin. Fili, a carpenter's apprentice with ties to the revolutionary group called the Fingers, chases after her, recognizing that she's injured. Gadin, suspicious of any Balladairan help, tries to escape, but is cornered. Fili convinces her to accept aid, offering food and a place to rest. As they talk, Fili expresses her distrust of Princess Luca and hints at revolutionary sentiments. Gadin, exhausted and wary, warns her that revolution is not a game, speaking from experience. Before she can explain further, Gadin collapses from blood loss and hunger. Fili, now responsible for her, must decide what to do next. Gadin's fate, and possibly the future of the rebellion, now rests in the hands of someone who despises the ruling class, but has no idea just how deep this fight goes. In Chapter 26, Gifts, Luca waits anxiously for news of Gadin while Touraine and Peril search the city each day, returning empty-handed. Luca is forced to focus on politics, needing to secure support from the nobility. She attempts to win over Everard, offering exclusive shipping rights to Qazāl, but he remains hesitant, suspecting her motives. Meanwhile, Luca's frustration boils over. After witnessing Touraine's anguish over the abuse at the droidist school, she orders Gil to prepare Madame Beryl to take over the orphanage, planning to seize it from Nicholas. Touraine, exhausted from the fruitless search, receives a package from Jagotai, a wool scarf and a letter saying they will survive. The message hints at rising tensions in Qazāl, with Istam growing impatient. Touraine begins doubting Luca's chances of victory, considering accepting Nicholas's treaty as a temporary measure, but Aranon warns her against making rash, one-sided decisions. In Chapter 27, of mirrors, Touraine spends her nights sparring with Durfer, trying to exhaust herself after long, fruitless searches for Gadin. Durfer teases her about Luca, offering herself as a distraction, but their moment is interrupted by Luca's arrival. Durfer gifts Touraine a finely balanced sword, instructing her to wear it at the longest night masquerade. Touraine asks Luca for a ship and food to aid Qazāl, revealing that the country is fracturing. Luca refuses, knowing her uncle won't allow it. Desperate, Touraine suggests staying with Luca in exchange for her help, but Luca takes it as an insult, feeling used. Luca admits she took action against the droidist school, but warns that if she defies Nicholas, others will suffer. Furious and hurt, Luca agrees to provide provisions, but tells Touraine to send a new ambassador when ready. Their trust is shattered. Touraine will stay until the masquerade. In Chapter 28, Bloody Knuckles, Fili brings a wounded Gadin to her master's shop, convincing him to let a doctor treat her despite the doctor's prejudice. Fili pays for the medicine with her own savings, and Gadin slowly recovers. While she heals, Fili listens in on the Fingers' secret meetings, where they plot against the princess and dismiss the idea of working with Qazāli. Fili, who has a magical connection with wood, unknowingly reveals her gift to Gadin while working on a prosthetic leg for her mother. Their fragile trust is shattered when the Fingers suspect Gadin might expose them. Before they can act, Gadin escapes with Fili's help, but the gendarmerie captures her, taking her back to the palace. When Fili returns, Brother Michel blames her for exposing the Fingers and demands she prove her loyalty. Desperate to belong, Fili agrees to help them, no matter the cost. In Chapter 29, The Longest Night, Luca and Touraine reunite at the palace celebration, where Luca is visibly affected by Touraine's striking appearance. Touraine, still searching for Gadin, tries to enjoy the night but remains distant. The festival showcases Qazāli performers, but the celebration turns tense when Bryce de Moyenne challenges Touraine to a duel at Duke Nicholas's urging. Touraine refuses, but Luca steps in to fight in her place, wielding Touraine's sword. The duel is fierce, and Luca manages to land a winning blow, striking Bryce's rear and embarrassing him before the crowd. Just as victory settles, a scream disrupts the celebration. Luca turns to find Sabine convulsing on the ground, foaming at the mouth, poisoned. Meanwhile, Fili, secretly working for the Fingers, has infiltrated the palace to poison nobles, and now chaos is about to erupt. In Chapter 30, a clenched fist, Sabine collapses from poisoning during the Longest Night celebration. Touraine tries to heal her, but is unsuccessful. Luca orders the guards to take Sabine to the infirmary, and Aranon confirms it's poison. Luca faces her uncle, Duke Nicholas, as he accuses the Qazāli of being responsible for the attack. Despite his commands to arrest them, Luca asserts her authority, declaring the Qazāli under her protection. She orders the soldiers to escort the acrobats and others to safety. While chaos erupts around them, Luca takes charge of the situation to protect her guests, creating suspicion about Nicholas's involvement in the attack. She orders a search for the poisoners, leaving the garden in a tense standoff. Meanwhile, Fili flees the scene, aware that her involvement with the Fingers could lead to discovery. She escapes the palace garden, using the magic of the roses to hide her trail as she returns to the city. In Chapter 31, of Walls, Sabine is poisoned during the Longest Night celebration, and Touraine stays by her side while Luca anxiously awaits her condition. Aranon confirms the poison and helps Sabine, though she warns Touraine about the toxic face paint. As Sabine slowly recovers, Luca and Touraine share a tender, intimate moment, but their connection is interrupted by Sabine's arrival in the infirmary. Tensions rise between Luca and Sabine as they argue about Luca's future and the political implications of her feelings for Touraine, with Sabine advising Luca to let go of her attachment to the ambassador. Touraine, heartbroken by Luca's cold words, seeks solace in the garden. She is interrupted by Captain Peril, who leads her to a section of the hedge where roses have mysteriously bloomed in winter. Touraine senses Balladaire's magic at play and begins to question the involvement of Luca or someone else in the strange event. In Chapter 32 of Agony, Touraine brings a rose from the mysterious hedge in the garden to Aranon, suspecting it holds something to do with Luca's magic. Touraine struggles with her feelings for Luca, unsure whether to reveal her suspicions about the magic. Aranon, still grieving her lost love, advises caution, warning Touraine of the consequences of trusting Luca and the dangers of being consumed by her desires. Meanwhile, Duke Ansir has arrested the Qazāli, including Gadin, and plans to hold them in prison. Touraine, furious, demands to know where Gadin is, and Perrault, a soldier loyal to the Duke, reveals that Gadin is being held at Le Fontenard. After a tense confrontation with the Duke, Touraine is forced to negotiate for Gadin's release, offering to sign the treaty under the Duke's terms. However, Gadin is left behind as leverage, and Touraine vows to make things right. A healer's interlude. 3. Of rage, Aranon is consumed with rage over the Duke's actions and the helplessness she feels in protecting Gadin. She confronts Roland Tassau, a monk and assassin who had once trained with her wife, demanding why he did nothing to stop the Duke from harming Gadin. Roland, loyal to his god and vows, refuses to kill the Duke despite Aranon's anger and accusations. As Aranon struggles with her own rage, she longs for the power she once had, to heal and to destroy, but she cannot access it. Her feelings of betrayal and frustration intensify, and she confronts Roland, questioning his god's authority over life and death. Roland, calm and firm, refuses to forsake his vows, but reassures Aranon that he will help her however he can, though it is unclear how far his aid will extend. The chapter highlights Aranon's inner turmoil and her growing frustration with the political and spiritual constraints around her. Part 4. Queens and Kings. In Chapter 33, the beginning of the endgame, Luca grapples with mounting political pressure as her uncle, Duke Nicholas, makes strategic moves to solidify his power. She learns that Bryce is heading south to secure Masreden while her shipment of aid to Qazāl is raided, signaling a tightening of control. Touraine bursts into Luca's chambers enraged, revealing that the Duke has Gadin in captivity and has arrested the acrobats. Despite the tension between them, Luca agrees to help Touraine rescue Gadin in exchange for information about Balladairan magic. The conversation turns personal, with Touraine accusing Luca of exploiting her and playing the political game. Luca, in a moment of clarity, decides to strike a deal with Nicholas to release Gadin in exchange for her public abdication as a show of goodwill. Luca's internal conflict grows as she contemplates the cost of her decisions and the true nature of her father's legacy. In Chapter 34, The Queen's Gambit, Luca delivers Gadin safely to Touraine, who is overwhelmed with relief. Afterward, Luca meets with Sabine and Touraine in the salle, where Luca reveals her offer to her uncle, to abdicate in exchange for Gadin's medical release and control over Shallan interests. Both Sabine and Touraine react strongly, with Sabine questioning Luca's decision. Luca, however, is determined, explaining that her uncle's moves have cornered her. She outlines a plan to assassinate him, using Balladairan magic to manipulate his wine and secure his death. Roland, a monk and assassin from the southern mountains, offers his help, confirming his role as a trusted figure sent by Aranon. As they finalize their strategy, Luca stresses urgency, needing to act before her abdication is announced. The three women agree to cooperate, putting aside their differences for a shared cause of revenge and justice. In Chapter 35, Poisons. Sabine and Luca prepare to poison Duke Nicholas's wine in Luca's study. They set up 5 bottles, with Sabine expertly breaking the seals and preparing the bottles. The tension is palpable as Luca carefully measures the poison, a fine, undetectable powder. Sabine, though reluctant, helps Luca, acknowledging the weight of their actions. After the poison is added to each bottle, Sabine and Luca work together to reseal the bottles, marking them subtly to distinguish the tampered ones. Sabine reflects on Luca's love for Touraine, and Luca admits it, though she remains guarded. The plan is set. Sabine will deliver the poisoned wine to the Duke that night. As Sabine leaves, Luca is filled with doubt and fear, realizing the irreversible nature of their actions. Despite this, she is resolute, knowing that this is her only way forward to secure her throne. In Chapter 36, Many Legs, Pruitt, and her survivors, led by Savrouche, reach Ras Elbar after following Sev's guidance. Pruitt, still hoping to reunite with Noe and Kira's, receives strange dreams and visions that push her toward the coast. She eventually finds Kiris and learns that Noe is safe. However, they face a new threat. Balladair's king's own soldiers are approaching. Pruitt devises a plan to confront them and liberate Masreden, but first, she needs to speak with General Lavas of the King's Own. Upon meeting the general, Pruitt uses her former Balladairan connections to gain his trust and secure a position within his camp. She then sends messages via Savrouche warning Kiris and Yorub of the impending danger. However, Pruitt is caught by the soldiers and beaten, but Savrouche successfully delivers her messages and Pruitt remains determined that Kiris will act. In Chapter 37, Plucking the Rose, Touraine struggles with guilt over Gadon's injury and her inability to protect her, yet tries to stay involved with Gadon as she recovers. Gadon, though healing, expresses distrust and resentment toward Touraine, questioning her motives. Touraine, feeling responsible, reassures Gadon and promises to find out who's targeting Princess Luca. Gadon hints at knowing who attacked the carriage, revealing a girl who shares similarities with her. Meanwhile, Philly deals with her own conflicts after receiving a visit from Ambassador Touraine El Qazāli on behalf of Princess Luca. The princess expresses gratitude for Philly's work on her mother's cane and offers her a place in her service. Philly is torn, feeling guilty and unsure of her future. She discusses the offer with her master, Maître Gaspard, who hints at using Philly's proximity to Luca for their advantage, suggesting she may be of use to the Fingers. In Chapter 38, the princess, Sabine, and Luca attempt to poison Duke Nicholas, but Sabine's efforts fail, as the Duke survives despite consuming the poisoned wine. Meanwhile, Touraine struggles with her feelings about Luca's abdication and the search for the Rose. Luca, determined to honor her promises, prepares to announce her abdication in the Grand Hall. As she delivers her speech, Philly, the Rose, is revealed to have magical abilities which she reluctantly explains to Luca, including the cost of using her powers, blood. Luca offers Philly amnesty in exchange for her cooperation. However, just as Luca renounces her claim to the throne, a palace soldier fires a shot, causing panic in the hall. In the chaos, Philly attacks Luca with a hidden blade, stabbing her in the stomach before fleeing, leaving Luca injured and reaching for Touraine in her final moments. In Chapter 39, On Self-Interest Reprise, Luca is critically wounded after being attacked during her abdication speech. Touraine rushes to her side, trying to stabilize Luca as she bleeds out. Despite her best efforts, Touraine struggles with the futility of the situation. As Luca loses consciousness, Touraine recalls her failure to heal Gadin and pleads with Qazāl, the god, for help. In a desperate act, Touraine uses her limited healing magic, placing her hands on Luca's wounds and praying. After a surge of energy and a painful release, Luca's heart begins to beat again, though she remains unconscious. Peril and Aranin arrive, and Aranin directs Touraine to continue healing Luca. Despite the danger, Touraine's focus remains on saving Luca, driven by a deep personal desire to prevent her from dying. The chapter ends with Luca's life hanging by a thread as Touraine continues her efforts to save her. In Chapter 40, Not the Princess, Touraine reflects on her complicated feelings and choices while caring for Luca, who is still recovering. As she sits by Luca's side, Touraine grapples with her past ties to Balladair and the potential future with Qazāl, torn between the two. She has accomplished her mission for Qazāl, but now faces a personal crossroads. Durfit's arrival prompts an awkward conversation about loyalty and fear, and though Touraine is tempted to stay close to Luca, she realizes that she cannot be pulled back into the Empire's grasp. Meanwhile, Luca, weakened and vulnerable, expresses a desire for Touraine to stay. However, Touraine is determined to find freedom, and despite Luca's plea, she walks away, leaving the princess behind. Touraine's choice is a painful one, and as she leaves, Luca's emotional cry echoes in her heart, challenging the decision she's made. In Chapter 41, The Death Knell, Touraine, struggling with her feelings and choices, returns to her room and is cared for by Aranin. While reflecting on her emotions, She admits to herself that she may want Luca, despite the complexity of the situation. However, when the morning bells ring, signaling Nicola's death, Touraine's focus shifts to protecting those she cares about. She learns from Durford that Tiro, a boy she once knew, has been killed by poison, and Nicholas is after Luca. The urgency of the situation grows as the palace descends into chaos. Touraine, deciding to prioritize the safety of Aranin and Gadin, prepares for the confrontation ahead. She joins Durford and Denio, moving through the palace to find Luca. In a tense moment, Durford distracts the soldiers, allowing the others to proceed. The chapter ends with Touraine's resolve hardening, even as she faces imminent danger. In Chapter 42, A Family Variation, Luca is escorted through the palace, expecting to be taken to prison by her uncle's soldiers, but instead, she encounters Touraine and Denio, who help her escape. As they move toward the king's library, they are confronted by a group of palace guards. A violent confrontation ensues, with Touraine taking down soldiers, while Luca reluctantly picks up a rifle to defend herself. When they finally reach the library, Luca faces her uncle Nicholas, who reveals Tiro's dead body. He accuses Luca of causing his son's death and threatens Sabine's life. In the ensuing chaos, Luca and her allies fight to survive, with Nicholas escalating his cruelty. Ultimately, Luca decides to show mercy by handing Tiro's body to her uncle, but she vows to hold him accountable. As the palace burns, Peril arrives and arrests Nicholas for treason, marking the end of the struggle. In Chapter 43, Victory, Luca navigates the aftermath of the palace fire, feeling the weight of her losses, Gil, Tiro, and the damage to her family's legacy. As she reflects on her new role as queen, Touraine finds her in the ruins of her parents' room. The two share an emotional moment, with Luca admitting she never imagined her victory this way. They discuss their past and the complicated nature of their relationship, with Touraine revealing a Qazāl story that hints at their own dynamics. As they grow closer, Luca offers Touraine a future together, suggesting they unite for both their people's benefit. However, Touraine hesitates, torn between her duty to Qazāl and her new life with Luca. The chapter closes with a hopeful but uncertain future, as Touraine requests time to think about their future together. The two find solace in each other's presence, despite the challenges ahead. In Chapter 44, Welcome, Jolly Soldier, Pruitt, beaten and bound, is escorted into Samra by General Moyen, who plans to showcase his power. As they approach the city, Pruitt's rebellious spirit resurfaces through a song she wrote mocking the soldiers. Upon arriving, she is confronted by General Moyen's ally Yorub, who labels her a seditious Qazāl. Pruitt feels the presence of her allies, Sev and Kiraz, who are waiting to help her escape. As the situation intensifies, Moyen orders the killing of Pruitt, but Sevrush's call signals the chaos to begin. In a blur of gunfire and confusion, Pruitt is freed by Kiraz, and they fight their way through the square. Pruitt eventually finds herself on the roof with a rifle, her heart racing. She sights her target, Bryce de Moyen, and takes the shot, marking her first move in a dangerous escalating conflict. Epilogue. Not the Princess reprise, Touraine reflects on the quiet and empty Grand Hall after the fall of Duke Nicholas, marking a new era with Luca's coronation. Luca, now queen, faces the weight of her responsibilities. As she prepares to sign treaties and cement alliances, she remains contemplative and burdened by past decisions, particularly the death of Tiro. The tension between her and Touraine remains, as they grapple with their roles and what their future together may hold. Luca reflects on the painful cost of her rise to power and the uncertain political landscape ahead. When a letter reveals that Pruitt has sacked Samra and taken control, Luca is stunned. The withering disease is also spreading, adding to the kingdom's woes. Touraine offers support, but Luca knows the challenges ahead will require more than just her resolve to overcome. The chapter ends with Luca's commitment to fixing what's broken.